Welcome to our Climate Wisdom live stream from COP29 Climate Change Conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. We bring together experts from the field of civil society, faith, science and policymaker for a meaningful conversation in the midst of a world in crisis. We like to share, to care and to inspire. I'm Sonja Ohlsson and I will be your moderator tonight. The session is called The Power of Positive Action. And it's a very relevant theme tonight because we are entering the second week of the climate change conference and the ministers are arriving today and they have the difficult job of finalizing the text and issues in the agreements that was so difficult for the negotiators last week, and especially the topic of climate finance. And the whole world is urging our leaders to reach a common ground and unlock the finance, especially for the vulnerable and communities. So let me introduce the speakers here tonight. A warm welcome to this studio on Monday evening. A warm welcome to Kalyani Raj, the president of All India Women's Conference. And Sister Jayanti, additional administrator head of the Brahma Kumaris. And both of you are actually representing two very old, huge, woman-based organizations from India. So it's special to have you here tonight, because you would embody positive action, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yes. Sister Jayanti, you have represented the Brahma Kumaris at the UN since the 80s on topic of women, peace, and climate change recently, since 2009 when we started to participate in the COP conferences. And you've been the head of the delegation since. And you are a spiritual teacher and faith leader for over 50 years. So warm welcome, and also to our listener. And as you listen to this evening session, most welcome to think about what positive action would I like to do today or tomorrow. Raj, Kalyani, you have 28 experience in the financial and banking sector.
Yes.
And then you took a drastic change and complete change of career and joined All Women India's conference in 1998. And now you work as a volunteer. Since 2023, you've been the president of this organization.
Yeah.
Would you like to share about the work that your organization is doing?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Sonja, first of all, to invite me here for sharing this dais with this august lady. For me, shifting from the corporate sector to the social sector was a real change of working, complete different scenario here. I came to know about All India Women's Conference when we had just moved from Hong Kong to India, and then I walked in there, and when I heard about the work they were doing, I was quite impressed, and so I sort of said, yes, I would like to volunteer there as well. And the first assignment I was given was to supervise a pre-primary school which the organization was running in the leprosy colony in Delhi. So I started working there, and that was an eye-opener for me of the ground reality. And I just got involved with the organization slowly. I was handling different departments, and today, as you said, that I took over last year as president. So the All India Women's Conference is one of the pioneer women's organization in India. It was started in 1927, so we are going to have centenary celebration soon. So initially the organization was started for propagating the education for women, because in that around 1927 and 30s, the access to education for women was still quite restricted. So that was the whole idea. Margaret Cousin, an Irish lady, started this organization. Over the years, we have sort of enhanced our area of work, scope of work, and we have gone beyond education to sort of skill development, capacity building, for the or sort of a holistic socio-economic empowerment of women. Climate change, environment is basically very connected to women. Women connect to environment so passionately. So the climate change and environment is also one of the sort of a cross-cutting issue for us when we are creating awareness on various issues, because we are looking at all the issues which impede empowerment, and we try to address all those, and environment and climate change is one of them. So we work on that also, creating awareness, even developing sort of supporting micro-led, sort of women-led micro solutions for climate change mitigation and adaptation. We are working on energy conservation, water conservation. So our branches, most of these programs are implemented by our branches. We have branches across India, nearly more than 400 branches across India, and nearly more than 80,000 members as volunteers working for the organization. That's our biggest strength.
Impressive. Thank you for sharing. I wasn't aware that it was so big in India, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Talking about women's empowerment, I know, Sister Jayanti, that women's empowerment is a topic very close to your heart. And last week here in the Wisdom Studio, we had a session on gender equality and climate change. But how can we empower the women of today? But also, how can we empower our sisters in the Brahma Kumaris to face future climate-related disasters? And do you advise them to get engaged in the environment work, or what is your advice?
When we started in 1937, the founder had a vision of a better world. And within that better world, of course, he began to think about justice and equality, in particular gender equality at that time, because the region that he was in, Sindh, which today is in Pakistan, it was very clear that women had only second-class citizenship. It definitely wasn't equality.
Yes.
And even today in that region, it is still probably the same. And what he understood was that it was spiritual empowerment of men and women, not just women, but it would be spiritual empowerment that could bring about equality and a better world for all. And so he started first a school and then a gathering, and it was a movement that focused on spiritual education. I remember when I was 17 and applying for university and so on, the dean of a medical school told me that there were only 20% of the places in medical school for women. Now, this was in the 60s. It wasn't in the dark ages.
Yeah.
This was in the 60s. And I was quite shocked. And I think I probably would have become a very aggressive feminist. But thankfully, I came across the Brahma Kumaris and started studying spiritual teachings. And I realized that if I'm limited by my consciousness of the body, then there'll always be boundaries that I set myself. I can't do this. I'm not old enough. I'm too old, or I'm a woman. How can I do this? What will society say? There'll be all of these issues that come up. But I was very happy to come to the experience of the inner being, the spirit, and how when I'm aware of that inner identity, literally it feels as if a button's being pressed and the light is able to shine. And in that awareness, then there are no boundaries. I am that inner being, the soul, and I can achieve whatever it is I choose to achieve. So I think that part of the whole work of the Brahma Kumaris over the decades has been to make people aware that they're spiritual beings, men or women. Beyond that, I am spirit, I am a soul. And I see that when women have this awakening that happens within them, literally their lives begin to change. They begin to understand what it is they need to do for themselves, how it is they can better help their family. spiritual power is not power over anyone else. Spiritual power is the inner sense of realization that I have to do what I feel is right. And so it awakens the conscience, it empowers the conscience so that nobody can stop me from doing what I know to be right, and nobody can pressurize me into doing something that is wrong. And so that is then real freedom, real empowerment. And understanding these secrets of spirituality changed my life totally within a very short space of time. So I know that even at this moment, in terms of women's empowerment in particular, our work has been for everybody, but women have benefited hugely from this. And in terms of climate change, I think people have enough statistics to know that it's the women who carry the burden, who suffer the greatest in trying to help their families and support their families. And so when there's resilience within a woman through spiritual empowerment, she's able to overcome the challenges that face not only her, but also her family, and help them move forward too. We work a lot in rural areas in India especially, and what we found there is that women, of course, are really the ones who are managing the whole household. And there again, we find that helping women farmers, for example, understand what is yogic agriculture, which means they don't depend on pesticides, or they don't have to buy expensive chemicals, etc. It helps such a huge amount in their transformation, but it's also a big contribution to the environment.
Very interesting to hear this personal experience of empowerment, and listening to both of you. It started with education. You starting with education, you starting with spiritual education. Interesting. Kalyani, many scientists predict India will be a country mostly affected by climate change. And in today's India, how is especially women affected by climate change?
Oh yes, there are enough studies and data to prove that in India as well as many other developing countries will be worst affected, and women will be worst affected. In the context of India, because of the long coastal lines, season variance, and poverty, lack of capacity in women. So these are all the factors which will sort of create the differential and disproportionate impact on women. And there are many things, which I can highlight, but I will just flag one or two. One of the I would say major issue right now which women are facing because of the climate change is excessive heat wave. Yeah. India has been sort of recording, excessive heat wave and sort of breaking records, I think, in the last 10 years, year after year. And because of that, in fact, there was a report from UN, I think UN Women brought out a report, and they sort of linked the excessive heat and the increase in stillbirth and premature birth in India. So the heat wave is, while it affects everyone, to the women especially, it is, sort of differently impacting, because they develop a lot of diseases because of that, and they are not capable to handle the heat wave. Many of the women don't live in such a circumstance where they can handle this heat wave. They don't have such a structure of the house where they live, where, the heat wave will not penetrate inside. So these are all major issues. And a very critical issue connected with that is the water crisis, because excessive heat wave naturally enhances the need for water, and women being the water provider basically for the family. And even today, I think there are places wherein women walk miles together for fetching the water for the family. So this was water scarcity, water crisis is increasing their the impact, because they also have a lot of this menstrual hygiene issue because of that. They have diarrhea, and they have many other linked issues, health issues because of this, this heat wave and water connected. And another issue I would say, which I would like to flag, is the additional burden on women because of this climate change and sort of climate migration by men within India. Because I have personally seen some villages in India, in Sundarban especially, where because of this unseasonal rain or drought, there's a failure of crop, and because there's no agriculture income. So the first thing men do is move to the city looking for alternate profession. So but the women are left at home managing children, managing old parents, and additionally working in the fields for whatever resources they can generate. So these are all creating additional burden on women. I can even talk about, this women working in unorganized sector. They are working in a pathetic condition. Again, because of the heat wave, they don't have that toilets facility probably, and when they are working standing and working during the heat, it causes a lot of health issues for them. So there are many such issues which are impacting the women differently and sort of disproportionately, I would say, in India.
Yeah. Very touching to hear the stories from the ground. Yeah. And here we are sitting talking about power of positive action, so much positive action needed.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sister Jayanti, when I started meditation, many years ago, now 40 years nearly, they told me I have to become powerful. And I didn't know what it meant to be powerful. What is it? I asked 20 different teachers and I got 20 different answers.
Yeah.
But then Sister Jayanti said that to be powerful also means to be positive.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I thought that I can do. I can stay positive. That's not that difficult. But Sister Jayanti, what is your personal stories on empowerment and positive action for the world?
I think for me at this moment, empowerment means to have clarity, to know what it is I need to do today that's going to create a better future for myself and for others around me. And I think that this is something that everybody can partake in. Because so often we get depressed with all the news that we hear and it really brings us down. So often people at COP conferences tell me how the atmosphere gets so heavy that they get burdened with all of that. So spiritual power in this case means being able to keep myself up above and remain positive and to know that yes, there is something we can do for the future. And even if it's little steps that we can take, I can't make the world perfect today, but maybe I can take a little step forward to move myself in that direction so that I'm dealing with my own weaknesses and removing those so that I can be strong and I can help others around me. I mustn't give in to fear, because I think that that's just going to be paralysis. It's not going to be useful for me or anyone else. And so if I can keep positive attitude and positive vision of the future, then I know that I can rise above the heaviness of the atmosphere that's there at the moment. And I think this is something that we can all do. Can I take little steps? Can I use less electricity? Can I be more careful about the energy that I'm using? So yes, maybe I can't manage without my car completely, but can I calculate, is it better for me to walk? Can I manage that distance? And I'm sure it would be definitely better for my health if I did that also. So positivity and empowerment definitely go together. And it means at this moment taking little steps and moving to the point where I can see that, yes, every little step is in the right direction.
So we're coming back to the little steps. In the previous session, we also talked about starting with small steps. And interesting.
Yeah.
Kalyani, you're also a board member of the Disaster Management Committee, and they have a concept of capacity building for women to adapt to post-disaster situations efficiently. What do we need to do to adapt to disasters efficiently? Can you share some personal experience about disaster work you do?
See, I didn't have any personal experience as such, but then during the course of my work, I realized that most of the time when we talk about women, we talk about them as vulnerable, or we talk about some schemes, we talk about them as women as beneficiaries. But we are not looking at the women as first responders or actors. I realized that is most important, number one, because post tsunami, I had visited the villages in South India, and some of the women who we spoke to, and we realized, how they came out of the situation, such challenging situation, and in a very, in a very brave way, So, in fact, we had gone to those places with the collector, local collector. And so this woman, we asked them that what would you need? Would you need some clothes because everything was washed away and all that? They said, no, we don't need the clothes. In fact, the clothes have been piled up there, donation clothes, and they don't need that. What they wanted was stove. So, we bought them stove. So, the need, what women need to take care of the family is very essential to realize. Another thing I realized was during this disaster, when I was member in charge of disaster, with this National Institute of Disaster Management Institute of India, we conducted a training for nearly 25 women from across India, and we gave them all sort of training related to the post-disaster managing situation, which included even post and prenatal care, even delivery of a child, childbirth, and hygiene part, menstrual hygiene part, also gender-based violence, because that's another thing which a lot of women and girls face in disaster shelter centers. So these were the trainings, these were the aspects which were included in that training. And we realized also one movie we made for AIWC, a short documentary. And when the shoot was on, one young girl, just came forward and said that I would like to be included in that movie. So we said, why? So she said, I want to tell them that why we are not given swimming lesson like my brother or like, other boys. We need to, because she had some personal experience. She faced a situation in flood when, she had to literally sort of carry some family members and she lost some family members. So this was a personal experience. So she came and said, why we are not being given that training. So that's one thing we realized, that disasters or climate-induced disasters or natural disasters are bound to happen. We are not having control. The thing we have control on is preparedness. So that's the thing we are looking at. We did conduct a lot of, disaster preparedness training with the support of NDRF battalion, and even otherwise we do conduct regularly among our branches to how to manage in the thing, how to sort of, because mothers are always worried about how to, create the food for the family next day. And in fact, I must share an interesting thing. We did a workshop in Bombay on the thing, and then one of the IIT professor who came, he said that they went to sort of do a survey in a village which was drought affected. So he went around and he heard the same story from all household, that no food to eat, no food to eat. But when he went to one house, there was an old lady sitting on a mud sort of a bench. We call chabutra in Hindi. So she was sitting there and she invited them for lunch. So he said, how come the whole village is out of food and how are you there? Where do you store your grain? She said, right below where you are sitting. So, the traditional knowledge of women is saving the grains for, calamity. So those are the things we have to sort of look at, and look at them as main responders and actors. Train them. Thank you.
Interesting. You want to add anything on climate resilience and disaster?
When we've been asked to step into disasters, or even without being asked, just to respond, we found that on one level it's all the physical sustenance that's needed, but on another level it's actually psychological help that's
Yeah.
needed, emotional and spiritual help. And so we found that if we were there to do what we know how to do best, because I'm thinking about the earthquake in Bhuj. I was very much involved in part of that. And so we found that the immediate food, medical supplies, all of that arrived, but within a day, 2 days, people were trying to deal with the trauma that they'd been through. And so spiritual help given at that time was extremely valuable. And so I think that people don't always appreciate that there's a non-physical dimension of help that's needed.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing stories from the ground. Very good. Shall we have a meditation now? We can send good wishes to people who are affected by climate disaster, and we can end our beautiful conversation this way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sister Jayanti, you like to guide?
Thank you. Going inside and coming to the awareness of the inner being, the light that shines in the center of the forehead. I realize that when I say I am the being of light. And in this awareness, I can feel my own inner strength emerging. I'd forgotten about this, and I'd become so dependent on external factors and things out there. And the reality is that within I, the soul, the being of light, I have all the spiritual power that I need to be able to have resilience, to have clarity, to build my capacity, and to know what is the best that I can do in any situation. In silence, I emerge this inner strength so that my own inner being is able to shine more brightly and is able to show me the way ahead. But also, the light that I am can also ignite the light in others. And so from one lamp to another, we can create a whole rosary of lamps together and shine so that the light reaches out and touches those in distress. And the light is able to restore equanimity and clarity in all of us. We see the way forward, leaving the darkness behind and creating a world of light. Om Shanti.
So thank you to both of you for a beautiful conversation about women's empowerment and sharing stories from the ground. And warm welcome. And I wish you both a good week here, next second week of COP. And thanks to our global audience, and thanks to our patrons and supporters and volunteers in this studio, making the climate wisdom a reality. And please do join us tomorrow evening for another session. And you can find more details on our webpage, echo.brahmakumaris.org. And on our website, we also have a poster called 10 Ways to Change the World, which has 10 small steps each of you can take every day to create small or big impact. So thank you and good evening from Baku and Climate Change Conference. And now we play a video from All India Women's Conference where you can see more about their work. Good evening.
पलायन के कारण हम लोग भी अन्य लोग भी खेती करनी बहुत मुश्किल हो गई है। जो लोग गांव में खेती कर रहे हैं उनको बहुत परेशानियां उठानी पड़ रही है। गांव में कम लोग जो हैं भी वो खेती कर रहे हैं, पर लेकिन खेती करने से तो सारे जंगली जानवर आके खा जाते हैं। कम लोगों के कोई जो घर में वही करते हैं। वो जो सब जंगली जानवर रात को तो दिन को तो बंदा रहते उनको तो भगा दो, रात में जो सुहार आते उनको कहाँ भगाएं। जो पिछली बारिशें हुई उसके कारण हमारे गेहूं की फसल को बहुत नुकसान हुआ। खेतों में होने के बाद बारिश हुई जिससे वो गेहूं वही जमीनी में ऊपर नहीं आए, सड़ गए हो पानी के चक्कर में। अति बारिश होने के चक्कर में खेतों में वो जो प्राकृतिक पानी होता है ना नीचे से पृथ्वी से निकलता है वो आ गया और खेत पूरे 1-2 महीने तक पानी से भरे रहे, जिसके कारण सारा गेहूं की फसल नष्ट हो गई। फिर पीछे बोए हमने, तो पीछे बोने से लास्ट में जब आ गए हो उसको जंगली जानवर तोते खा गए, तो हमारा हाथ कुछ भी नहीं लगा। तो ऐसे खेती करने से गांव में खेती करना बहुत टफ हो गई।
This valley of Dehradun, nestling in the foothills of the Garhwal Himalayas, earlier known as the sleepy town of grey hair and green bushes, is now slowly turning into a concrete jungle of a smart city. Environmental degradation and climate change has affected us very badly. Earlier, we had comparatively moderate summers and winters. Of course, the monsoon was very heavy. But now, we have sudden storms. Our crops are getting damaged. Our fruit trees are getting damaged. The world-famed lychee of Dehradun just seems to be dropping off half-ripe with the hailstorms that seems to be coming because of all the climate change. Dehradun basmati rice is just not growing anywhere. We have lost our crops. We have lost our heritage.
పొంగింది 2 రోజులు ఆకాశం బాగాక 2 సార్లు సముద్రం పొంగి పెద్ద ఎర్రలు వచ్చి అలా 2 రోజుల తర్వాత తెగింది. తర్వాత నీరు తెగిపోయిన తర్వాత సముద్రం ఎలా ఉంది, అప్పుడప్పుడు సముద్రం కెరటాలు పెద్దవి పడుతుంది తుఫాను చేసినప్పుడు, నీరు వస్తుంది. తర్వాత ఆకాశం బాగున్నప్పుడు ప్రాణం ఉంటుంది.
To speak about climate change and its effect, then I have to speak about those peoples who are the least represented, the slum dwellers. So the first basic thing that came from their experiences on climate change and how their life has been changing from the last few years was definitely the water logging because of the untimely rains, because of the climate extremes. And this water logging which stays logged in their area for a longer time definitely triggers a lot of diseases like dengue, diarrhea, and also they remain vulnerable to that. And adding on to it is the high rising temperature Possibly we all are facing the same issue, but for them it's a bit more because they are basically the daily wage laborers. They are the ones who are working in construction sites, are working in the open. So working in such a high temperature and humid temperature in Kolkata, it's become more and more difficult for them to work. So they are exposed to dehydration, to heat strokes and all. So that also leads them to cut down their working hours, which directly affects their income.
What makes women so especially vulnerable to the effects of climate change and the disasters that follow in its wake?
It has been very well documented that women are the lesser contributors to climate change but are the greater victims of it. Another imbalance that needs to be corrected for our climate efforts to meet its success. Because in reality, climate change is a matter of justice. Yet, even as we push our governments for climate justice, women around the world are fighting to endure everything from storms to starvation. While we are advocating gender equality, we are hearing horrific stories of domestic abuse and violence. How can we achieve any global effort when half the world's population is struggling to overcome gendered obstacles just to reach equal footing with her fellow men? Women need to be provided the basic tools to survive in what is still a man's world. And it has to start from the very beginning, with that single factor that can change everything: her education. Girls and young women need to have mandatory and uninterrupted access to education, no matter the circumstances, be it calamity, poverty, or society. This fundamental resolution is the key to building their capacity as knowledgeable experts who can sit across the table from men in any forum and participate in the discussions and decisions as informed representatives of their gender. This will result in more effective policy and inclusive action by virtue of having considered all gendered perspectives. If aided by strong political will, sufficient investment, effective research, and accurate monitoring measures, this systematic change can begin gender equality and in turn climate justice, among other things. This is exactly what we are trying to achieve with organizations like the All India Women's Conference. At this moment, the entire world stands united in the face of the sudden new threat of COVID-19. But we cannot forget the dangers of this other ticking global time bomb either. We must adopt the same urgency in our efforts as we have with COVID-19 and take decisive, collaborative, global action in the fight against climate change. We know what causes it. We have an idea on how we could fix it. It's time we did it.
Our tenacity as a species comes from the fact that we believe we make our own fate. Today, it is up to all of us to do our bit, to raise our voice, and to ensure that this planet is something that we can leave to future generations with pride.